In today's video, I'll be giving you guys 3 reasons why the Philadelphia Eagles will repeat as champions in 2025. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with my first reason as to why the Philadelphia Eagles will repeat as champions in 2025, and that is the fact they had a really solid draft. Now, in this section of the video, I do want to talk about everything they lost in free agency because in general, they did lose a lot, but then I want to talk about how they kind of recovered in the 2025 draft. In the offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles lost a lot of pieces. That includes guys like Paris Campbell, Mekhi Becton, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Kenneth Gainwell, Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay. You get the point. They lost a lot of pieces in free agency, and in totality, they didn't really bring too much back in free agency. Yes, they signed a few players, and yes, they made a move for Kenyon Green, but in totality, not really a free agency class that really is that desirable. Ultimately, when you are a team that is as good as Philadelphia, with as many contracts that they were going to have to hand out, an offseason like this was eventually going to happen. This is an Eagles team that for the most part is fairly aggressive during free agencies. We saw it last year with the Saquon Barkley move. This year, they just did not have the finances nor the openings to really actually make too many moves in free agency. Ultimately, when you win a title, at some point, there's going to be some problems that end up happening. You've seen it with Kansas City. You've seen it with San Francisco, even though they didn't win the title, but they made it to a title. And for the most part, you see it with almost every team that eventually goes on to win or be in a championship. It's kind of the evolution of really good teams. You're really good for a handful of years, and then eventually contracts really spur up and make things quite difficult. The nice thing about this is that I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles lost anything too important. For example, they didn't lose an A.J. Brown or a Saquon or a Jalen Hurts or really any of their main core guys. Yes, losing Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, and some of your depth options in the secondary is going to suck, and you're going to feel maybe the impact of that really early into next year. But I do think a team like Philadelphia, for the course of the last several years, has done a really nice job of preparing for this offseason by bringing in some young guys, developing behind them, for example, like a Tyler Steen, a Kelly Ringo, a Nolan Smith, etc. They've done a really nice job of just kind of drafting in those later rounds some future guys. And for the most part, you look at a Milton Williams, you also look at a Josh Sweat, those were not first round picks who they brought in. Milton Williams was a 3rd round pick, and Josh Sweat was a 4th round pick. So this is an Eagles team with a track record of being able to draft edge rushers in certain positions in the later portion of the draft. They've also shown the ability to address their problems in free agency. So for anyone worried about those losses this offseason, I would not be too worried about them. Yes, you will feel the impact of them being gone, but I do think Philadelphia has done a really nice job of preparing for this offseason, and I do think maybe by the trade deadline or in free agency next year, you can see Philadelphia be a bit more aggressive in fixing up their problems. But let's go ahead and talk about the 2025 NFL draft, where for the most part, I really liked their draft. I do have a couple comments on it though. And we are going to begin with round 1, Jahad Campbell. Now, if you guys know me or if you guys watch my podcast, by the way, First and 10 in the link in the description below, you guys will know that I have been very high on Jahad Campbell. Jahad Campbell to me was easily a top 10 prospect in this past draft. Now, I want to be transparent here. I think if you had put Jahad Campbell in last year's draft, I don't think he'd be a top 10 prospect. I do think this year's draft was kind of lacking in that star power, and I felt like Jahad Campbell was a very high upside pick. Now, with Jahad Campbell, you get somebody who has a lot of versatility. He could play off the edge. You can use him as a blitzer. I think he's also solid enough as an off-ball linebacker. I don't really know where they're ultimately going to use him at. I do think maybe you'll see him start off as an off-ball linebacker behind Nakobe Dean, playing alongside Zach Bond. I could see him kind of being a rotational linebacker early on, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some reps and some chances to play like an outside linebacker role or playing off the edge with his hand in the dirt. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him play some of those roles this upcoming season, at least maybe as like a partial player there. They did draft Jeremiah Trotter as well, so you kind of have some competition there and some depth in the linebacking core, so it will be intriguing to see what they do with Jahad Campbell. Ultimately, though, I just think he's a really talented player, very athletic, instincts are really good, has great versatility, violence, a solid tackler. I think there's a lot of things to still work on. He's obviously a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience playing linebacker, transitioned to linebacker in Alabama. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I don't really know if he'll be an instant impact contributor like right away, especially on this Philadelphia team. But I think he will easily get probably 400 to 500 snaps next year, playing multiple positions positions, and for the most part, I think Philadelphia is going to just try to figure out where he's best suited at. Ultimately, to get this guy in the back end of round 1 because of some injury concerns, just think it makes a lot of sense. Philadelphia was trying to, I think, trade up for him. They had him as a top 10 player in this draft, so to get him at pick 31 is insane value for a guy of his talents. There's also a lot of questions with Nakobe Dean because he's had some good moments, but also has dealt with injuries. So if you don't think Dean is your long-term answer at linebacker, I think Jahad Campbell easily could. Then in round 2, they took Andrew Makuba, the safety from Texas. Now, as you can see, Texas flag here. So I got to watch a lot of Andrew Makuba, and I love this guy. I think that he is an awesome player that has also some versatility to play multiple positions. He played at Clemson before transferring to Texas. At Clemson, he played a lot of different positions, including safety, as well as playing in the nickel. I think he could be a really solid slot corner if you want him to be. I don't really think he has outside corner physique or look to him, but I do think inside the nickel or playing on the slot, wherever you want to call it at, as well as playing like a free safety / strong safety role, I think really does work well for Andrew Makuba. This is a Philadelphia team that did lose a lot in the secondary with Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers out the door. There's now going to be a lot of questions as to how the secondary looks this upcoming season, but I think these past 2 years, they've done a fantastic job of drafting really talented secondary members that are going to be their foundational pieces for years to come. Last year, Quinyon Mitchell was fantastic on the outside. Cooper DeJean played multiple positions. I really wonder what they're going to do with DeJean. Does he play outside corner? Does he play in the nickel? Does he move over to safety? I kind of like the idea of Cooper DeJean just consistently moving around until you really find a nice spot for him to fit in with this current unit. Just think he's a really solid player, and then you pair that now with Andrew Makuba, who I'm a big fan of. I think there's a lot of versatility in this room, especially between those two specifically. In terms of who Makuba is, I think he's a fine mover, has good hips, instinctually very well. He is a little bit slight of frame, so I don't necessarily think he's ever going to be a really solid physical tackler, meaning like if he's going to meet Derrick Henry in the hole, Derrick Henry's going to run his ass over, but I think he can at least make an effort because at Texas, he was a willing tackler, and for the most part, and he made some plays last year that were very impressive. There's a play in specific that stood out to me where, and I might be getting my facts 100% incorrect, but I'll give you my best rendition of it. Jeremiah Smith, I believe, was running a deep post. It was like a 45-yard post down the field in the end zone, and it was one-on-one between Jeremiah Smith, aka the best freshman receiver maybe in college football history, or at least in recent years, and Andrew Makuba, who is a lot smaller and honestly not as big as Jeremiah Smith. He made a really nice play on the football to keep Jeremiah Smith from catching that ball. And again, I know Jeremiah Smith is a freshman player, but I think Jeremiah Smith would have been a top 10 pick this year. That's just how talented he is. So the fact that Andrew Makuba made that play was very impressive. And I know that's just one sample size of a play, but for the most part, I felt like Makuba was always in the right position. I never felt like he got picked on. I never felt like he was ever the reason why a big play happened. Just thought he's a really solid player. I don't know if he'll ever necessarily be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro guy, but you pair Makuba with Blankenship and Quinyon and DeJean. The versatility in this room is really nice. There's a lot of ways to employ this unit. I just think it's a really awesome pickup. And again, back end of round 2, I thought was great draft capital to spend on a guy like Andrew Makuba. Now I'm just going to go through the day 3 picks here really quickly. Round 4, Ty Robinson. Round 5, Mac McWilliams from Central Florida. Smile Munden from Georgia. Drew Kendall, Kyle McCord, Miles Hinton, and Cam Williams, as well as Antoine Powell Ireland. Now again, I want to reiterate, I'm just going to quickly kind of go over these guys because 90% of these guys, or at least a handful of these guys, will be special teams, will be practice squad, will be depth options that never make a significant impact on this roster. But I do think there are some guys here that have some legit upside to be good players. Let us start off with Ty Robinson, who is a fine player, made a lot of plays for Nebraska, ran a 4.83 at the combine. I guess this is what they're hoping could potentially be their Milton Williams replacements. I'm not expecting much from him early into his career. End of the day, he's picked outside of the top 100, so it's really hard to project that. But if within 2-3 years he can be a guy who has a role on this team, I think it's a solid pickup. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Milton Williams, a 3rd round pick, Josh Sweat, a 4th round pick. This is a team that knows how to develop guys. You put a guy like Ty Robinson behind a Carter and a Jordan Davis, feel pretty good about him as a depth option for the future. Then there's the Kyle McCord pick. Funnily enough, this is an Eagles team that you would think would want to find like Jalen Hurts clones in the draft. For example, you would think they would want almost like a Trey Lance in free agency, but this is an Eagles team that over the course of the last few years has been more inclined to go after pocket passing quarterbacks. Like for a while there, it was Gardner Minshew. Last year was Kenny Pickett. It looks like Kyle McCord is that next guy, and quite frankly, I see a lot of similarities between McCord, Pickett, and as well as Gardner Minshew. McCord is an interesting quarterback. He can be a bit of a gunslinger, and I think when he's making right decisions, he can make every throw on the football field. Recruited by Ohio State, played as a starter for Ohio State for a season, then transferred to Syracuse. He had some great moments at Syracuse. He also had a bunch of really bad moments too, but I actually like this pick a lot. Obviously, Tanner McKee's also there, so I'm expecting Tanner to be the backup next year, but hypothetically speaking, if Tanner McKee isn't as good, or maybe McKee ends up moving off of Philadelphia to try and be a backup somewhere else, I could see a world where Kyle McCord steps in 2, 3 years, 4 years down the line here. It is the backup to Jalen Hurts. I don't think McCord will ever be a starter or will ever be the replacement for Jalen Hurts, but as a backup option, sure, why not? Also, we'll talk quickly about Cameron Williams. Again, I'm a Texas fan, so I saw him right hands on. I think for him to go in round 6 was kind of criminal. Like, he had a really good start to his season last year. By the way, his only true year actually being the full-time starter for Texas. I thought for the first 6 to 7 to 8 weeks of the year, he was fantastic and made a lot of nice plays. At one point via PFF during that season, he was ranked as a potential day 2 or day 1 draft pick until the back end of the year where he had a bad injury, and then he went out there and played against Ohio State, and of course he kind of got picked on. For him to fall to round 6, I think is kind of crazy. Now, admittedly speaking, I don't know if Cameron Williams is the highest upside guy. I think he has a lot of talent, but he's such a big dude and has kind of a hard time moving, so I don't really know if he'll ever really be a great puller or great out in screens. But I think if he can get his hands on you, he's big, he's strong. I think he moves well for his size, especially with moving his feet. Dealing with the injury was tough for him, but he gets to learn behind Lane Johnson for several years. I could see a world where Cameron Williams maybe kicks inside to play guard and maybe becomes the Mekhi Becton of this team, or maybe he sticks and develops as a developmental tackle and becomes a swing tackle or becomes a potential starter at some point. I think to get a guy of this much talent in round 6 is just insane. And again, I thought he was underrated heading into this draft. I didn't think he was a day 2 pick, but I thought round 4 was the earliest, and I thought round 5 was the latest. To get him in round 6, great value. All in all, really productive draft. I thought their first round pick will be a huge impact to this team. I also think Andrew Makuba will be an awesome, impactful guy too. And then in day 3, a lot of developmental special teams guys that maybe 1 or 2 of these guys could end up playing an actual role for this team. Let us go ahead and hop into my second reason as to why the Philadelphia Eagles could repeat as champions in 2025, and that is the NFC is in somewhat of a decline. Now, in this section, I really want to focus in on each individual NFC team and give you a reason as to why I think there is some decline for these rosters, specifically for this upcoming season. Let us begin in the NFC North. In the NFC North, the Chicago Bears are currently the best suited team for the future. I love where they're heading, but I don't think they're ready yet in 2025. A lot of things have to go their way. Same thing with Detroit. I love Detroit. I think they're a threat in the NFC. However, they're dealing with a lot of changes. New OC, new DC, a new starting center. I don't know what to expect from Aiden Hutchinson, so there's a lot of worries there. The Green Bay Packers. I love Green Bay as a roster. I just don't think they're as good as the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they need another year of adding pieces. Minnesota, a really, really awesome roster, but a big question mark at quarterback. In the NFC South, I'll just kind of clump all 4 of these teams here. Really, none of these teams are a serious threat to Philadelphia outside of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I think are an awesome team, but I just don't think they're as good as Philadelphia. In the NFC East by themselves, you have the Dallas Cowboys, who I do think will be better next year, but I don't think they'll be better than Philadelphia. Maybe they could give them a run for their money, but I still think Philly's the better team. The Giants, obviously Philadelphia clears them, so I'm not worried about them either. And then the Washington Commanders, who, look, I think Washington's a good team. I just don't think they really are as good as Philadelphia. And frankly, I like what they did in this offseason. I thought they made some nice acquisitions, but I just could kind of see a world where the Commanders have a bit of a decline next year because I feel like they overperformed big time last year. I love Jaden Daniels. I think he's an awesome top 10 quarterback already after his rookie season, but I have a lot of questions with a lot of pieces. Right now, the receiving core could be better with Deebo Samuel, but I don't know if it will be. Zach Ertz is like into his late 30s, so you got to expect him to regress in some ways. I don't love their running back room. I don't love their edge rushing rushing room. I have a lot of questions on this defense, so I think Jaden Daniels will have to carry them very far next year, which could happen, but I just think Philadelphia is better. Then there's the NFC West. Arizona is obviously a big-time threat this year, but I don't think they're quite yet a championship threat, more of a playoff threat, so I'm not too worried about them. San Francisco, same sort of vibe. They have a really easy regular season schedule, but just think Philadelphia is the better team, and if those teams matched up fully healthy in the playoffs, I do think Philadelphia would win quite easily. Seattle's a fun team with a defense that I think could be really good next year, but I just don't trust Sam Darnold to make a deep playoff run, so I think Philadelphia could win there as well. Then there's the LA Rams, and if you're asking me today who is the biggest threat to Philadelphia this upcoming season, it's really two teams. That is the Detroit Lions, if things go their way and the coordinators are fine, and the LA Rams. I think the LA Rams are just absolutely loaded with talent with so many great pieces, but they have some injury concerns at quarterback. I think their secondary could be exploited because of their youth and maybe their lack of star power, and maybe Philadelphia could exploit them in those ways. Again, I do think they're serious threats to them though. So in totality, I kind of laid it out for you guys. None of these teams really scare me if I'm Philadelphia. There's not a team out there, that is a Baltimore or a Buffalo or, for example, the Chiefs. None of those teams are in the NFC. And when we talk about making a Super Bowl run, you just got to get to the Super Bowl and then anything can happen. And that's exactly what Philadelphia is going to have to do here. I'm really not too worried if I'm Philadelphia within the NFC. Sure, Detroit will be a threat. LA will be a threat. Minnesota, Green Bay, Seattle, maybe Dallas and Tampa Bay. Some good teams there, but if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm just not too worried. Which then brings me to my third reason in the finale here of this video, and that is the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles in totality just have one of, if not the best rosters in the NFL. Now in this section, I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't think we have to. I just briefly want to cover their roster because it's so damn good. Quarterback Jalen Hurts, one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the NFC. I think it's very debatable. He might be the best quarterback in the NFC. Saquon Barkley, the best pure running back in the league. AJ Brown, probably a top 5 receiver, one of the best 50-50 ball winners. Devontae Smith, one of, if not the best wide receiver 2s in the country. I do kind of worry about that wide receiver 3 spot, but I'm not too worried about it when you have Smith and AJ. Dallas Goedert, one healthy, a solid tight end. Great offensive line, though I will say Tyler Steen has not looked perfect out there, so we'll keep an eye on him here. Kenyon Green also might start for this team next year too. Then on defense, of course, we'll start with the bottom here. Cooper DeJean, Kelly Ringo. I do think that outside corner spot is going to be really intriguing this year. Makuba at safety, Blankenship at safety, Quinyon Mitchell. You also have some veteran depth here with Eli Riggs, Kelly Ringo, Adoree Jackson. You have your young guy in Mac McWilliams. Linebacking core is nasty. Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, Trotter, and Campbell. Your outside linebackers, you have Azeez Ojulari, who you just brought in, Jalex Hunt, who's still developing, Josh Uche, who you brought in, Nolan Smith, who's ready for a breakout year, Carter and Davis up the middle with some young guys beneath them like Byron Young and Thomas Booker. Kind of worry about the depth there, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Moro Jomo kind of stepping into a bigger role this year, and Ty Robinson, their 4th round pick, who could be a rotational guy this upcoming season. Is this a perfect roster? No, there's no such thing as a perfect roster. It's damn near impossible to have a perfect roster. Is this team as good as they were last year? I'll make the argument that it's probably not, because I think it's really difficult to replace a Sweat, a Milton, and all those guys. Is this team just as capable of winning a championship? 1000%. I have not mentioned Kellen Moore leaving to be the Saints head coach, but I'm not too worried about that. I think the talent on this team is just so ridiculously good. And with this offense being probably going to be a top 5 offense by the time the playoffs roll around, all this defense has to do is be just as good, if not slightly worse than they were last year, and they'll be totally fine. In general, my final thoughts: the Eagles are damn good. The NFC is wide open. The AFC is very competitive this year, but all it takes for Philadelphia is to make that championship game. And then it just kind of comes down to that singular moment, that singular game. They're an experienced team. They've been there. They've done that. They're now defending the championship, and I think they have a really good shot of doing so in 2025. But you guys let me know in the comment section below, will Philadelphia repeat as champions? I love you guys. Peace.